All right, everybody. Thanks so much for stopping by another live episode of Real Estate Titans. I'm your host, Greg Fowler, traveling throughout the marketplace, interviewing the top real estate professionals in our field, essentially gathering insight, inspiration, really drives and motivates these top producers above and beyond everybody else in what I'd like to consider a real estate titan. Now, our very special guest, I cannot even stand it. I can't wait any longer.
Who shouldn't be on here with that intro?
This is amazing. This is amazing in here. Our first international episode with Glenn Twiddle. Glenn, it is an absolute honor, all the way from Australia, my friend. And you're in the future. I mean, you're literally in the future from us right now. This is amazing.
I'm going to give you the lotto numbers, man. I remember I did see a joke on remember the old sitcom Alf?
Yes.
I remember a joke on Alf to that effect. He said, I'm going to call Australia for the lotto numbers. And yes, I know. I'm honored to be here, although when I'm hearing words like Titan and top of the best, I'm sitting there thinking, nah, I'm on the wrong podcast. I mean, I need to be on the real estate mediocre people podcast.
Where's that podcast? I want to subscribe to that. But no, Glenn, seriously, that's your humility coming out. You are the best of the best when it comes to what you do and who you are, and your reputation is through the roof. So again, everybody out there who's watching or listening to this, get ready, brace yourselves, because it's out to be an amazing, amazing episode. But yeah, Glenn, if you're ready, let's just jump into the series of questions, get everybody out there really diving deep into you and really going through it.
Love to, man. Love to. I just shared the little stream here, so I'm just going to say, Greg, my brother from the other side of the world. So we get the message out there to everyone, man.
No, I appreciate it, Glenn, for sure. And just going into it, I mean, I think so. Right now it's 3:00 here Mountain Standard Time in Colorado. So it is what, 6 a.m.?
6 a.m. here, yeah.
6 a.m. in Australia the next day. So today's February 28th here in Colorado.
I'm on Tony Robbins' birthday, February 29 today.
Yo,
yeah,
29.
The leap year.
It's awesome, going through. So again, it's just an absolute honor, and I can't wait. So Glenn, let's just start with, I guess, the first question when it comes down to it is telling everybody a little bit about yourself.
I suppose, in a real estate context, and for your viewers mostly in real estate space, I'm just normal dude. I mean, I grew up in a city called Ipswich over here, which in the USA, it's kind of like there's a place a couple hours out of New York City called Sparta, New Jersey. And I ended up going there once thinking, am I at the right college? Because there was a performer there that I wanted to go see. And I drove for a couple hours out of New York, maybe an hour and a half out of New York, and I ended up at Sparta. And it's this little, almost country, hometown kind of thing, and it ended up being the right place. Wow. But I'm from a place that is not socioeconomically successful. It's just a normal, everyday town. It's got a bit of a reputation, for being I suppose what you guys would call a redneck, but no racist connotations, just down-to-earthy kind of thing. So anyway, there's that. And I'd never earned more than $40,000 a year, nor had anyone in my family kind of before this real estate thing came along. So someone handed me some books, like I saw on your recommended reading list on episode 100 of The Titans here. A guy handed me a copy of The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. And then after I'd read that, and I rolled my eyes, by the way, when he did, I'm like, oh, Jesus. This is that crud that Amway salespeople read. But I read it. Wow. And then he gave me Think and Grow Rich, and then Personality Plus, and then How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that's why I love that podcast. I really felt like I know this guy, like I know me, talking about Greg, because that was my journey as well, is personal development. I fell in love with it. And then I applied that to this little thing that I had on the side as a hobby almost called real estate. Because I was a musician before that. I'm a bad one. I play guitar and sing and things. But when I got into real estate, the only methodology, lucky I read all those fire up books, David Schwartz and Napoleon Hill, W. Clement Stone, and then it led on to the Jim Rowans, who led me to Tony Robbins and all of those mindset guys. Because if it wasn't for that, I couldn't have handled, even for the amount of time that I did, prospecting. Wow. So what those guys used to do with me, both live events and live speakers and the books, was it would scrape me up off the floor after a week of just getting pounded with rejection after rejection, like 98 times out of 100 per day, getting told F off or whatever. I couldn't handle it long term. I handled it with that input of motivation. but I couldn't handle it forever. So it led me to, because in Australia, at the time, there wasn't a lot of real estate training. There was some.
Interesting.
But it led me internationally because I needed to figure out, because most of the training that was here was limited to how to do a good listing presentation, how to do a good open home, how to do real estate really well, how to do a good, a good, what we call a seller marketing investment or vendor paid advertising, which is when a seller contributes the advertising fund, which I understand over there is relatively not done.
Right.
Because I've done some business with Josh Altman. I'm friends with Josh now. He's had me on $1 million listing, which was wonderful. Cool. And when we spoke about that concept, even he said, are you kidding me? We put 30, 40, 50 grand into the marketing. That's why before we take on a listing, we have to know it's going to sell because they're on the hook for 50 grand potentially. Right. Sure. So the training that was here was all about how to do the job at the listing opportunity and subsequently. Everything on this side of the ledger, like to get a listing, was all just prospecting. So it was all just calls and door knocks and all of that sort of thing. A little bit about letterbox drops and things.
Yeah.
But there was nothing that taught what I ended up learning from some USA mentors, a lot of them, was how to attract a client to me without a 10-year track record in history, how to get in real estate, how to get someone to come to me so that out of those 100 people that I was going to contact, I don't want to talk to the 98 who are going to tell me, go away. Yeah. I just want to talk to the 2 who were half interested. How do I do that? So I spent thousands of hours and hundreds of thousands of dollars flying back and forth between Australia and the US, doing every course, every seminar on the subject of marketing, guerrilla marketing, outrageous advertising, attention-getting tactics, everything. Wow. And then I applied those to the real estate industry with my business and then with a few of my early adopting students. And what ended up being test case guinea pigs back in 2008, 9, and 10, like I was teaching them back then what has now become true, but like there wasn't even a term influencer in 2009. The term didn't even exist.
You're right.
And yet that's exactly what I was teaching them that we needed to become back then. So those guys who were crazy enough to follow this guy that was teaching something that was unheard of in Australian real estate, well, they're now bearing the fruits of that with millions of dollars coming into their bank account without prospecting. Wow. So it's a beautiful thing. I'm so glad they're being rewarded with that because they now they're famous in their area. I've been with them in their little, communities.
Sure.
They can't go to the local shops without it taking hours because it's like if Arnold Schwarzenegger walked down the streets of Colorado, he ain't going to have a fun time because everyone's going to be wanting selfies all day or whatever.
Right.
That's them in their local area. So, I love that what was then a theory, what was then me doing it to avoid the agony of rejection. So it's almost like my most negative attribute ended up being the pain that caused me to find the answer to that pain. And that ended up becoming my point of difference in the real estate industry and now as a coach and a trainer. And I've been honored that the Lab Coat Agents guys and even Greg McDaniel and that from Real Estate Uncensored, a few of the USA, my USA friends that I now put you in that little alumni, my man.
Honored.
They've said, if Gary Vaynerchuk and Tom Ferry had a love child, that would be me. And I think that's the greatest praise I could ever get. I'm undeserving of that, but I'll take it.
I would agree with that on steroids, my friend, all the way. I mean, to the highest level, Glenn. I mean, hands down for sure.
So it's been a wild ride, brother. It's been a wild ride.
But going through that process and obviously looking at the beginning of your life and your career path and building things to a different standard, not really fitting in the mold and there's no box for you. Some people say, think outside the box. The box doesn't exist for somebody in your bracket, Glenn. And again, there's so many people who are watching or listening to this right now, and they're wanting to learn and grow from other professionals such as you, which are very rare to do and have a glimpse into it. But I want to talk a little bit deeper about your whys before we get into tactics and actionable items, which I know we could have an entire episode just on true actionable items and things to grow and scale. But I want people to get to know Glenn a little deeper first. So if the next question is the why, and this is an important question to me, and I think so many other professionals, it's thrown around quite a bit, but really what motivates you, Glenn, and gets you excited every day to do what you do to the level you do it at? And for well over 15 years, I mean, grinding serious amount of time and hours and effort. What's your why or whys?
Yeah, it started, I didn't have any, right? None. And that's what I love, is a lot of people now come to me thinking, oh, it's all fine for Glenn to do it, but I love that there was nothing horrible about my background, because it used to drive me nuts when I wanted to be successful, where everyone who was successful seemed to have a childhood that was like torture or homelessness or pain or cancer or all this bad stuff.
Yep.
I had good parents. I was good. I'm like, maybe I need to go bankrupt and just be horrible. So I had nothing good, nothing bad. I want to say nothing good. I had everything pretty okay. It was just good, just normal. And so everything that I've done has been a result of, the tactics that were given to me by mentors and mentors who have passed on, like Napoleon Hill and all of those folks. So they all basically say words to the effect of, if you know your why, you'll figure out your how and all of that stuff. And I didn't have one, or at least I didn't know I had one. But I didn't kind of realize that I suppose I was programming my brain from when I was a teenager and I didn't even know it. And the reason that you and I sort of probably came across each other's path is you've got a podcast called Real Estate Titans. And my event that I did early on in my piece was called the Titans of Real Estate. So for those who are watching on the audio, I just brought up a graphic. And Greg, if you want to describe what you're looking at there.
Oh, yeah. So it's literally Glenn and some extremely influential professionals across the board of real estate. And it says the Titans of Real Estate. So,
and we managed to headline with Sir Richard Branson. I mean, the guy who owns Virgin. That's ridiculous. And so my why, I suppose, is these are the mentors. Like in Australian real estate, that was a who's who. That is everyone who's anyone in real estate. And at the time I was running an event, way back when I first started, I ran an event called Be Phenomenal or Be Forgotten, which is Eric Thomas's ET, for some of your listeners who might know E. That's his brand. And these were some of my friends and speakers and students who would help me whenever I bring in someone like Eric. And I set a goal at that time to have my childhood hero come and speak at that. And I had no way to figure that out. But when someone says, what's my why? This was the guy that I used to walk around school impersonating. From a teenager, it'd be him and Sly, and I just idolized them. So in a way, I didn't even know it, but I was law of attractioning even back then. And so, between then, when setting that goal and now, within 2 years, I hired Arnold and he came to an event. Sitting at that table, he invited me to his house. And as you can see, there's Josh Altman, that's my partner, Naomi, Matt Altman, Arnold's partner, Heather, Arnold, me, my son. And Arnold asked me to come to his house. So that's Arnold's backyard. As you can see, that's his Terminator photo booth in his backyard.
I love it.
There's me and Arnold. Hey, there's Tim Ferriss, at Arnold's house. David Blaine was there doing magic. Don Cheadle was there, and there's Arnold and his two sons. I like to say that's his real son and that's his wannabe adopted son.
Adopted son, yeah.
So it's like I've been programming look at that shot there. That's the cover of my book, Punching Above Your Weight. That's Gold's Gym with Arnold Schwarzenegger and me hanging. It was his idea. He said, "You're carrying too much weight, Glenn. Let's go to Gold's and we'll work out and pump up and all of that." Just dream come true stuff, Wow. But it led me to my why, I suppose, which is who's my list of heroes? Heroes. Of course, it's been wonderful, to be in business and be friends with Arnold. But Kevin Smith is one of my favorite podcasters, filmmakers. I love it. I got on the Hollywood Babylon podcast and I love Kevin, built a relationship there. Hanging with Stallone and drinking booze and hanging. And that's him hitting on my girl, Naomi. Look at it,
It's all right. It's Sly. Let him do it.
But, Sir Richard Branson, just, having a billionaire that for a day, a billionaire was on my payroll. Holy hell. Insane, how do you do that? I was the first person to bring Gary Vee out to this country. I was on an episode of the Ask Gary Vee show. Like my heroes, I made a list of all my heroes. And I then set out to start figuring out ways to work with them, to socialize with them, to be in business with them. And, you know, like I'm a UFC fan and I used to wrestle. Awesome. That's George St. Pierre, arguably the greatest of all time in his octagon. How does that happen? Because that's my why. And the one difference is, instead of it just being a dream, I started getting plans in place to aim for some of those dreams.
Okay.
And so I end up living, you know, the life of my dreams. And I didn't even know that I was unconsciously setting those outcomes. But the beauty of it is, once I realized, having had that big dream of all dreams win, where I had a 6-month period where, look, I was on speed dial with Arnold. Literally, I was working with him in Australia, bringing him out in a professional capacity.
Sure.
But then he's inviting me to his house and hanging out. Then once or twice a year, he'll invite me to a party again. I just got an invite to go in a couple months, play poker with him and some friends, just little, you know, events. Not events, you know, he'd invite over 40 of his mates, and there'll be Stallone and Jason Statham and me and a couple of my friends. And
all the Expendables, really. I mean, yeah, you look at that.
But dream come true stuff. And then once it sort of happened where, you know, the reason it all sort of happened when we talk about our why, one of the speakers, in fact, two of the speakers, they said the same question but using different words. It was, what would your goals be if you couldn't fail? And I wrote down, as a member of the audience, I wrote down, have Arnold Schwarzenegger headline at one of my events. So I was brave enough to, without any justification and reason that is even possible. Because at the time I wrote that down, I was just sort of starting in seminars and things, and I'd had a few little wins. But at the time I wrote that down, Donald Trump had just come to Australia, and this is way before presidential weirdness.
Wow.
And I'd heard that the bill for Donald Trump was $2 million. Oh, no. And he spoke with Trump, Tony Robbins, and Robert Kiyosaki. And I heard that the speaker bill for that event was $4 million before a single ticket was sold. And so when I had that in my head, though, when I wrote down that goal of have Arnold Schwarzenegger, I thought, well, if Trump's 2 million, Arnold's got to be that or more.
Yeah, sure.
So there is no way this goal can happen. But I'll just trust that speaker and I'll set the goal. I'll just do what I'm told, you know. And then another speaker said, what would your goals be if you weren't afraid? And this is a month later. Wrote down the same answer to the goal. So I was brave enough to, even though the dream was too big, to actually believe, with the safety net of that caveat, if you couldn't fail or if you weren't afraid.
Sure.
With that safety net, I was willing to write it down. And then the one differential was, all right, I don't often share this. All right, here you go. Now we get deep, man.
Oh, we want to get deep, Glenn. We want the real Glenn all the way.
I told, no, well, you always get the real me, but sometimes this one is just showing how small and farty I am. I don't even know what the word is.
No, this is good. This is good.
Let me go with this. I made that slide you saw before, right, with Be Phenomenal and Arnold. That was when I really set the goal and said, and I showed that slide at an event, because I just whipped up the slide and said, that's one of my goals. Now you can do it. You can do it. And then when I got home that night, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Because I had this vision of some of my students asking me years from now, how's that Schwarzenegger goal going? Like, this is the night after the event. I went, oh, I just did that as a goof almost, you know, I can't do that. So I started investigating to find out. I wanted to get in writing the quote that I thought that was coming for like $2 million or whatever. Then when my friend or colleague or student or whoever's in that audience today calls me on it, I could say, yeah, I really tried, but look, it's $2 million. And based on the numbers here in Australia, there's a reason you've never seen a Hollywood A-lister headline an event out here, you know, of this kind before. It's because the numbers don't add up. I'd have to charge the entire audience way too much money. It's not possible. See, the two. I reached out to try and find Arnold and who represents him, which was a job in and of itself.
Sure.
Only so I would have an excuse for when I inevitably did not hit that goal.
Unreal.
And so, I mean, how wild is that? Now, when I ended up finding the person, I had to do some digging. The quote came in and it was still undoable. And in fact, when I first did it, was like, no, we're not coming to Australia, so no, right? But over time, no turned to, well, still no, but maybe, and then maybe turned to maybe not, but maybe, then maybe. One thing led to another, and it ended up being a number. that was still more than I can afford.
Sure.
More than I could possibly afford, but if everything rolled up and if I called in favors from every client I've got and said, hey, Chris, you know that money you pay me every month, I need a decade up front. But if I pulled in every resource and mortgaged a house, which I did, then maybe it'll work. So you know what? I just said yes, scared to death, paid the deposit with every resource I could scrape together. So it's still to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it wasn't $2 million.
Okay.
And he was the scariest moment of my life.
Wow.
It was too much for me to say yes, but it was too little to give me the excuse that I wanted. Does that make sense?
It does.
And so I had to say yes because I couldn't embarrass myself as supposedly a guy's trying to be a coach and saying them they can do it. When the opportunity comes for me to live a childhood dream, I had to say yes, even though I couldn't say yes. And so bloody hell, man. You got to give it a crack, and it all worked out in the end. So.
You know, Glenn, that's such a beautiful story in and of itself. And again, showcasing your mindset and true commitment to your craft and who you are as a professional. And again, that's a huge message for everybody out there is, you know, you have to reach, you have to go and reach for it. Even if you think it's insane, even if you think that it truly is impossible, everything is impossible until someone does it. You're an example of that. In your own mind, you're like, nope. And you went, and you didn't give up. You kept going, and look what happened. The rest is history. And that's just one of many instances where I know for a fact that you've gone above and beyond, and you've pushed the boundaries, and you've really exceeded the expectations of everybody around you. And that's a huge part. And why you say, hey, is there a medium Titan sort of scenario? You're above and beyond a Titan, my friend. I mean, in so many different ways, just your knowledge basis and your credibility, but just everything that you're saying to everybody that way with what you do. I want to really showcase this portion because I know that, Glenn, there's just a wealth of knowledge in there that you have shared with so many people all over the world, but I would love to take certain pieces of that, whatever you find to be relevant, and
whatever you need, brother.
So this third question I absolutely love, and this is actually a crowd pleaser for everybody who's watching or listening. They want to learn from the Titans. They want to understand how they've really grown and scaled business, or what advice they would give, whether they're newer into their careers or they're seasoned professionals in their own rights. So, Glenn, if you could look back at your career thus far and pick or choose one or two things that you did that took your business from one level to the next, what's that look like for you?
There's probably been a few.
Okay, yeah.
The first one I would say was just the principle of figuring out a way, and this was a 10,000 odd hour learning curve. So maybe start this, university degree in whatever way. Maybe start by buying a Dan Kennedy book. There's a guy over there called Dan Kennedy, a marketing guy. Okay. And he spawned a real estate coach over there called Craig Proctor, who teaches Dan Kennedy's kind of concepts through the real estate space. And historically, now I don't know if Craig is updated to a social media world. I trust he would, because Dan hated social media himself. But the concepts and principles that Dan talked about, even he recognized, I can't hate this thing because the world is glued to our phones. Everyone here is watching on our phones. Yeah. But the concepts I learned in some of those no BS marketing books were revolutionary. And the overall thing was, it's far easier. It's a more fun business life. It's enjoyable if you can be the one that is pursued rather than you chasing around business. If you can flip that on its head, and people would say, yeah, but Glenn, I got into real estate and just no one calls. And therein is the enigma to solve. If you can solve that, and it's possible. So, and look, it's a variety of ways, but essentially it's not treating yourself and your business and your marketing like a begging, pleading salesperson, but it's positioning yourself as an expert, specialist authority. Because the generalist in any field, that's real estate or any of your lenders or builders or anyone, the generalist, just the salesperson, is the most frequent. They're everywhere. They're, as soon as you see them, knocking on your door, you hide behind the lounge chair. You don't want to hear from them, and they have to compete on price because there's so many of them. Like a general practitioner doctor. If you've got a sniffle or a sore throat, kind of like I got now, you go to the GP, but if they're not there, you just go to the other one, But the next level up that is if you specialize hardcore in an area, like if you become, some of the USA names I might know is maybe I was going to say Brian Casella because he specialized in Southern California for a little while, but he's almost nipping away at that top tier now. Mm-hmm. And after the specialist is the celebrity specialist. And that's where in the real estate field, Josh Altman doesn't have the same, I met Luis Ortiz, I brought him out to Australia, the Altman brothers. Those guys, because they're famous, don't have the same challenges that a typical real estate. Now, they still have challenges, don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
But it's a different life that they get to live because they're the famous expert celebrity. Right. So now, here's the beauty of it for you guys. You don't need to be a famous celebrity on $1 Million Listing because, it's awesome. Josh put me on that show. I'll thank him forever because I show my guides. So I'm the only Aussie ever going, there you go, guys. But got it. You don't have to be famous across the country and across the world. You just have to be micro famous in your local area, but positioned in with the same sort of tools. So for example, you should write a book on real estate on your area of expertise. And you think, but no one will publish me. Who cares? I'll publish you. Right. Send me your book. I'll give you the printing quote, and it'll probably be cheaper over there in America anyway. But you don't have to be published now, So get a book. Podcasts do take a little bit of time. So unless you've got the time to invest, but if you were going to do a podcast, local content, interview the local butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, local business owners, local politicians, if you've got any local sporting stars or heroes, and maybe even if they've left to go to California, fly to California for 5 minutes of their time. They'll appreciate you're a lunatic. There's a reason I got on $1 Million Listing. It's because Josh offered me, here's a really good takeaway on this subject. Yeah. Josh offered me, because he was going to come out and do an event for me, which was wonderful. That started as a commercial transaction, like a lot of those things did. Sure. Come and speak at my event. But when he said, I'll give you 15 minutes for an interview, let's do a Skype or whatever. And I said, okay, when were you going to give me that 15 minutes? Just give me the time. Great. I'll be there. It's 2 days from now. I'm jumping on a plane this afternoon. I'll see you in 2 days. Wow. When he saw a lunatic fly 14 hours each way to just go and do 15 minutes and then fly back home, he saw a lunatic. So we ended up having dinner as soon as I landed the night before. He said, what are you doing tomorrow? Come 3 hours early and I'll run you through some properties and I'll get the cameras to follow us around and we'll get you on the $1 Million Listing. Then we'll do the interview. We ended up forming a friendship because I was stupid enough to do, because it would have fulfilled my purposes to do a Skype like this, say, hey, Josh, you're a champion or whatever. Yeah. Because I was crazy enough to just say, I'll be there in 2 days. He knew how inconvenient that was, how expensive that is to get last minute rates, to take a week out of your time to just fly to LA. I didn't go to Disneyland. I went, saw Josh Altman, flew home. Wow. That resulted in a relationship. So similarly, if you're in Colorado and the most famous Colorado sportsman is, I don't know, whoever that might be, go to wherever they are. If you're doing a local real estate podcast, interview them about their hometown, even if it is just 5 minutes. And all of a sudden, you're a published author, you're hanging with, Refrigerator Perry or whoever it might be that's from your area or wherever. It's showing my age. It's all over.
I love it.
Sports person.
So good.
So whatever a famous person has that identifies to the world as they are famous, then do that. If they're talked about in magazines, get interviewed in a magazine. Pay for an advertorial that looks like an interview in a magazine, even though it's advertising space. Right. Don't run it like an ad. Run it like it's an article, as if whatever a reporter would want, you would want them to say about your amazing skills as a negotiator, as a community leader. Write all that as an article and then pay for the space to put it in the magazine. Right. So all of those things, what we ended up doing was reverse engineering the things that say to the world, you're famous. Wow. And then how can we apply that in the real estate space? So I've got a show called Real Estate Experts. So that's not my main podcast, which is Real Estate Renegades, which is the one where I teach real estate agents. Real Estate Experts is a show where the credits for that show have me interviewing Schwarzenegger, Branson, Gary Vaynerchuk, Eric Thomas, George St. Pierre, like international and local legends. Right. And then my next guest is my real estate agent friend.
Yeah.
So they're on now a show that Richard Branson and Gary Vee were my last experts. And so even if the public had never heard of this agent, they're now on the show that they've heard of everyone who's been on that show. So
Right.
it elevates their celebrity position. It's all with a view to having the consumer out there see you at the local Walmart. I had to just quickly do the country adaptation there.
Switch up.
You see you at the local Walmart and they go, oh, that's the guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's the outcome that we're wanting. And with social media, it has never been cheaper to get that local level fame when it's 1 cent per impression. So I'll probably share this interview onto my page and pay, I don't know, $100. That will get potentially 5,000 to 10,000 of my marketplace to see me being interviewed internationally.
Right.
And heaven forbid it cost me 1 cent for every person to view it. Just take my 1 cent, Mark Zuckerberg. You know?
Just take them all day. But Glenn, everything that you said is piecemealed, so customized and really looked at through a true genius level. And most people, they don't think the way that you think. They don't really even understand that this is even an option to do until they hear or they're around someone like you into these levels. And again, we're just scratching the surface of what you're talking about and furthering everybody's careers into real estate. So in a shameless way for myself and for the audience, I want a way for everybody to get a hold of you, to learn more about you. I know all they'd have to do is just type your first and last name into Google and you're everywhere. So as we discussed, if you're not doing your job right, that's not the case. But is there anywhere specific that you would love the audience to check out, to really get more of Glenn and really understand deeper if they want to grow and scale their business to the highest levels?
Well, I do have a giveaway that I'm doing for my Australian guys down here. And it is one of here's another principle that I'm actually executing for my Aussie guys. And the principle is this. It's something that Gary Vee talks about. So if you don't have the book, The Thank You Economy or Jab, 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 Right Hook, then go and buy every one of those books. Get Crush It. Get Thank You Economy, probably my favorite of his books. Get Jab, Jab, Jab. Get all of them. But in Thank You Economy and Jab, 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 Right Hook, he goes into the concept and the principle of giving the metaphor of jab, 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 right hook. And in real estate, we need to make an adjustment. It needs to be jab, 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 right hook. Because don't underestimate how much the public doesn't like us.
Right.
It's just the fact. Like if a plumber has to jab, 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 right hook, we have to jab 100 right hook. Mm-hmm. So, and the jab as a metaphor is giving something. Like you're doing every episode, you are giving to your audience and you're never asking for a thing. Mm-hmm. I've noticed you haven't monetized, you're not doing nothing other than serving. That would be a jab. If my guys run a competition or a giveaway and they'll give something away from another business, they're promoting that other business, they're giving away samples of whatever that product might be. So they're driving customers to that other business and asking for nothing in return. Mm-hmm. What's it got to do with selling a house? Nothing. It's just about getting the personal brand of the agent and their name out into the public space in a way that is non-real estate-y.
Right.
So I kind of am walking my talk in that my jab for one of the promotions that I'm doing down here in Australia, there will be no right hook to Americans. So grab the jab. There will be no right hook because it's for a local promotion to come to an event eventually that I'm going to do in April. The jab is get a copy of this very valuable playbook with a checklist of all of the things, the ways to get your listings up onto Facebook in a way that actually gets attention. Right. You know, all of the things that we do on social media. So the URL, and we'll get it down in the comments and things. It's agent 20. No, sorry, I'm getting it wrong. It's 20 like 2020, the year 2020, 2020agent.com.au, the Aussie /checklist. So it's a free gift there. Look, that'd be a great way to kind of start the journey and get into our world is grab a freebie. But as Greg just said, in marketing, if you need to do anything other than just say Glenn Twiddle your name, then you're not in marketing. So lots of ways to get into the world.
You can find Glenn, and we will have links in the comments down below so that everybody can go into there and engage more and deeper. And again, Glenn, I wish that this episode was just straight out that one question, but we have at least 5 more questions to go. So I want to make sure.
Shit. I'm sorry.
No, this is good. This is good. So this changes the tone a little bit when it comes down to the series. And this is the tricky part of every every episode. It's the challenge question. Now, I know that you've alluded, very similar to my upbringing, is that there wasn't any dramatic thing that happened in your life on a personal basis, and that's okay. There's still lessons to be learned. Personal or business challenges, we all have them no matter what, whether it's in the past, now, or into the future, no one's exempt. But if you could look at your past, and if you're comfortable sharing a personal challenge or a professional challenge that you overcame, Glenn, that you became stronger because of it, what's that look like for you?
The first one that pops to mind was just being scared to death, having my financial future, my reputation, just everything on the line.
Right.
When I said yes to Arnold when I had no right to. You know what? The same thing did happen, and it is the same challenge, and it was the same fear, and it was the same panic, and it was the same all on the line, is a couple of months after Arnold. So I'd just spent, these events cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. My last big one, nearly $1 million. And they never make money. Like if you break even on those big things, you're lucky, right? That's after getting some new coaching clients and some sales. There is a reason that you don't often see Grant Cardone-esque events, right? Now, I'm not here to plug Grant's event or anything, but Grant has celebrities at his events, so, Kevin Hart's at his most recent one. Man, that thing needs to make some sales to pay for Kevin Hart, because when you pay $200, you don't cover Kevin Hart's bill. I can promise you that, especially when he's got Magic John and all that. So when I'm running these events, they don't make money. So after I'd barely broken even, after months of kind of trying to sell a few things and capitalizing on the exposure that I got and all of that stuff, here I am at a break-even point. I'm wiping my brow going, my God.
Wow.
Then I get an email, and my team has been, we've been sort of backwards and forwardsing with Sir Richard Branson's people. And I wanted him thinking, wow, I did Arnold. Now next year I'm going to get another one of my heroes, Sir Richard Branson. Let's start the communication, right? And after I'd reeled and I was wanting to comfortably do it in a year, maybe a year and a half, Arnold was early this year, maybe late next year. It'd be great. I'll be ready by then. Richard, the email said this, and I must have read it 100 times. It said, we're not looking to be in Australia at that time, but it'd be great if we could do September of this year, right? It would be great. Here's Sir Richard Branson saying, it would be great. Now, this is something like 2.5 months from the moment I read he wanted to play. And I'm like, I can't say yes to this. I just can't. But then one of his bloody quotes came up into my head, because I thought the marketplace won't tolerate 2 giant events of mine, let alone there's another, it's like the NAR conference, the biggest conference in Australia was also in my home city during that period. So I'm like, this will not work. I can't say yes to Sir Richard Branson here. But then his quote came into my head and it said, when amazing opportunity comes your way and you don't know how to do it, say yes and then figure it out along the way. And so once again, scared to death, I had to say yes to something that was impossible. So that was those are the biggest challenges when a person who doesn't naturally have a think big mindset was forced almost by, if you're going to actually bother reading these books, well, you better do something that they tell you to do, despite your natural predisposition to only do what you have evidence to support. So it's kind of like finding a way that if you're a big giant thinker, the gap that someone would have to add to your world, that you've got to add to your world, or in conjunction with a mentor or whatever, if you're a big thinker, but often big thinkers need someone with the step-by-step rubber on the road, realistic, here is the daily actions to do that big dream you've got. Right. Don't do that, it'll stay a dream, and you'll be the sort of person that whenever you have a big dream, your family rolls their eyes and says, here he goes again with another thing or whatever. So there's the big dreamers without the rubber on the road practicality. But if you're like me and you are naturally the practical, don't do it until you know what's going to happen, then you'll rarely dream big enough to do anything great. And that's by whatever standards you might hold as that, It might not be my goals and dreams going to be your listeners or yours, Greg, even though you and I are pretty similar. I'm pretty sure we share a whole bunch of cool dreams.
We're right there, Glenn. We're right there.
I think I want to be you. I'm going to go get myself some diabetes, man, because I hope you've shared that publicly.
There you go.
So yeah, that's kind of the thing. Is my challenge was natural predisposition not to reach for greatness.
Sure.
Challenging myself to do so, and then putting up with that fear whenever I did, is tough to this day. Is tough to this day, and but it always all works out. And that was my thing. Is the thing that got me the first time I did it was, you know what? If this all goes to crap and I lose a house and I'm a laughing stock in front of my peers, and what a way to go down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What a way to go bankrupt is chasing a dream to work with your hero. You'll have a story. It'll be an expensive one, but you'll have a story.
Gosh, Glenn, I'm telling you, I'm having goosebumps, just thinking about what you're saying there. And hopefully everybody's feeling or hearing this energy that's coming from Glenn is really just looking at your life and going after those dreams and not letting the naysayers or any ill thoughts of your past really push you in a direction in a negative sense. You're just going for it. And Glenn, I think that when you're talking about the stress and the different thoughts of losing everything and the money, I mean, that's a lot of negative stuff, but you didn't let it become that way. You became stronger and better, and you kept moving forward. And that's the message, is no matter how anybody out there is watching or listening is stressed, or they think they're over leveraging themselves, or they think they're dreaming too big, look at Glenn. Listen to what this man just said. And when you're a little nervous about an investment property or something along the lines of taking that jump into the new career that you're thinking about because you're miserable with your current situation, look at this man. Please understand that there are people that are doing way bigger things and way bigger levels, and they're doing it. They're making it happen. So Glenn, that's so inspirational all the way through and through. And again, anybody who is hearing this or knowing this, you're welcome. Thank you, Glenn, again, for taking the time. This is huge stuff. Now, I want to change the tone a little bit into this and go into actually my favorite question throughout the series of the Titans, and it's actually the travel back in time question. Now, we don't have a time machine, right? And we can't go back, even though you're in the future technically. But in all reality, when we come back to it, we can't go back in time and change anything, nor would we want to. Everything that you've been through in your life, Glenn, to this point has made you the man you are. Positive, negative, any stress that's going through. So this isn't really to change it, but if you could go back any age range, any time frame throughout your life, and give a piece of advice or two to young Glenn, what would you say to your younger self?
God. You know what? A few things went through my head about don't go to uni for 6 months because it was a waste of time. Don't be cranky when you don't get that job. I used to be an usher at a movie theater tearing tickets. And when I didn't get a trainee manager job at that movie theater, funnily enough, we were promoting Terminator 2 and all of those, my heroes movies. I was tearing tickets for my heroes movies. Right. I was so cranky. Maybe whisper in his, this is where all my thoughts went. Whisper in his ear, it's going to be cool, dude. Just don't worry. But you know what? If I was honest and I said, and sure, I'd go back and tell my 18-year-old, learn marketing, man. Don't worry about anything else. Learn marketing. Learn how to attract someone to you by celebrity. I could give myself all those young person's advices or whatever. Right. But what if, even if I went back in time, I'm giving this serious thought.
I love it.
What if I went back and whispered at my younger self, it'll all be okay, and that stopped the fear that led to the amazing thing? What if that took away something that with hindsight, I think, wow, I wish I didn't have to go through that horror, because it was horror and I still have to. But what if I got more confident and that cockiness removed the fear that stopped me doing the 10,000 plus hours to learn how to not prospect?
Right.
I reckon genuinely, if there was the time machine and you could go back and advise your younger self, I reckon you'd screw things up more than you'd make things better. So as much as I want to empathize with the crap that youngest, when we went through years of making cold calls, what we would have drinking sessions to get through them. Like we would start on just a light beer. By the end of it, every time anyone in our sales team got sworn at, everyone would have to do a shot.
Love it.
These were the things we did to numb the pain of cold prospecting.
Right.
What if that prospecting was needed for me to have Arnold Schwarzenegger's team and all of these people that I love on my phone, their phone number on my phone? What if that was the little butterfly effect that screwed it all up? So the honest answer to your question is, if I got in that time machine and I saw young Glenn over there, cranky, I would run the other way in the hopes that he didn't see me.
Right. No, but I love that perspective, Glenn, because that's so honest. And again, we would never want to change anything, because that you went through those pain points and that passion and the time frame that it took to learn what you learned to be the expert that you are today. And again, not to change that, but just picking a few things.
Let me ask you this though, man. How boring a podcast would this have been if I just said to you, yeah, Greg, it's pretty easy, this shit, isn't it? Just run some ads. Run some ads. Get your butt famous. It's going to be great. No one goes to see Die Hard without Hans Gruber, this close to. No one goes to see Batman without Bane breaking his back.
You're on a movie tale. I'm going to change gears on this. You mentioned who are your heroes. I'm a movie nut. So you mentioned Arnold and Sly. If you had to pick one movie of your absolute favorite of each, what is it?
Well, historically, Terminator 2. Yeah, it's hard. It's got to be Terminator 2. Okay. But this is Teen Glenn talking. It's got to be Terminator 2. And with Sly, it's embarrassing, but it's kind of got to be Rambo 2. And everyone else says First Blood was the one. I just love 2. Okay. Murdoch, I'm coming to get you and all. But I tell you, grown-up Glenn, Expendables 2.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't as mega successful as all that, but do you remember that cast? It had all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, it had Arnold, Sly, Bruce, Van Damme, Jet Li, Statham. It had all Chuck Norris.
Yeah,
if that movie was released in 1989, Expendables 2 would have been the biggest selling movie of all time.
People's heads would have exploded. It would have been like scanners just all over the place.
Yeah, man. So
I love your selection on that. If I asked myself that same question when it came down to it, I guess when it comes to Arnold, I mean, it's really sad to say, but I love Kindergarten Cop.
Kindergarten Cop. Everyone loves that, man.
I just enjoy that movie. It
might be a tumor. It's not a tumor. It's not a tumor at all.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the Terminator franchise, and when it comes to Predator. I mean, just what a classic.
Jesse the Body Ventura. The two governors in that movie.
Exactly. Real governors at one time. But I think that there's just something about that, and seeing that man in such a interesting role that way as a kindergarten teacher, and he just pulled it off flawlessly. I mean, I love him to death. Let's see, Sly, man, I don't know. I'm a Rocky fan. I love the Rocky franchise. I mean, really hard.
Well, how good? I mean, Rocky 3, right? If Clubber Lang isn't one of the all-time great bad guys of all time, no one is. To me, he's more evil than Darth Vader. He's more evil than everyone. When he says to Rocky, hey, woman, why don't you come to my house tonight to show you a real man? I'm like, in front of your man, just saying he's going to do that to your woman. I'm like, you are evil, man. So, I love it.
But, I mean, there's just those guys. I could go into the 80s. I mean, big 80s time frame. I mean, they ruled it. I love it. I mean, and Glenn, we need to talk about movies off camera, because this is great stuff.
Do that for a long time.
That's a whole nother conversation, and we need to definitely have a drink with that for sure. But okay, so I want to go into this portion too, and this is the next question, and this is the secondary crowd pleaser when it comes to it. Everybody wants to know what the Titans are doing to feed their minds, how they're growing intellectually. Now, I know, Glenn, you're a constant learner, and you're really, really a master of your craft and understanding every facet to it. But people want to know how you're feeding your mind. So you had mentioned several books already, but books you're reading or have read that have influenced you, podcasts you love that you're listening to, influencers or coaches. How are you feeding your mind, Glenn?
Yeah, I'm a junkie. I'm learning more than I'm teaching, and I teach full time. So it's ridiculous. I'm doing hours and hours and hours a day. So I suppose the real answer to the question would be everything.
Okay.
Like everything. That means if you have to sit through 3 hours of Rogan listening to Jordan Peterson just to get those nuggets, well, do that instead of binge watching Game of Thrones for 10 seasons, whatever. If you can do 10 seasons of Game of Thrones, 20 hours times 10 years, whatever it is. I've never watched a minute of it. Not that I'm bragging about that. I do have a few guilty pleasures, right? I'll go see every Marvel movie when they're launched. I'll take my kids, and I love those, right? But I've never, I don't often binge many of the Netflix series. And I've heard I'm missing out on some good stuff, right? But because I binge the Ask Gary V show. I'll binge Rogan. Rogan's my guilty pleasure because it's not always educational, even though a lot of the time it is.
Yeah.
But it's everything. It's whatever you're missing. So if you feel you're missing sort of some of the fire and motivation, listen to the fire and motivation guys, the Eric Thomas. He's my favorite motivational guy. But if you can't do because Eric Thomas is African-American, and if you just isn't your style, Larry Wingate is a redneck kind of Southern cowboy legend, teaching the same messages of common sense, good motivational kind of stuff, or Jim Rohn is a smooth, may you rest in peace, but there's all the motivationally stuff. A lot of it's free.
Right.
Beautiful. So that was one thing, is I need to get my head right. But then the next thing is all of the mentors in marketing. So I mentioned Dan Kennedy before, Jay Abrahams, all of those guys, even Tony Robbins' Business Mastery. I just went all in on my marketing mentors. Sure. And I suppose if anyone really, if anyone does dig my world, reach out and start having a listening to kind of what we do. And I can't wait to get Greg on my podcast to dig deep on his brain on this subject. But what you get from me, whether it is free stuff or whether it is any of my programs, I know I'm on the other side of the world, but we'll figure out a way to deliver to you.
For sure.
I'm the distillation of those 10,000 plus hours into here's what to do in real estate. So I suppose I'd just throw my name in the mix only because it'll fast track your learning curve from maybe 10,000. It's still not going to be easy. It'll still be hundreds of hours,
correct,
but maybe not tens of thousands. But probably not for the motivational stuff because, like I said before, I need as much mindset, motivational, brainwashy stuff as most of you guys. You know what I mean? I'm more messed up than all of you guys. So I have lots of mentors in the mindset space that I go to for a pick-me-up. And but in the what to do sense, if that's where you're lacking, if you're all fired up and you get to the office and your boss just says, make some more calls, you'll be right, keep prospecting hardcore. The biggest learning that you want to make sure you go all in on is definitely learning how to drive social media advertising. We're all glued to it. You're watching me and Greg on it now, likely, depending on which podcast you're listening to or Facebook or whatever. You need to be able to get your name, face, and face, name, and kind of personal brand, corporate brand to a degree. But look at how much you've seen my face and my name, and maybe you see my little tiny logo there. There's that much corporate, and there's this much personal.
That's right.
So that's the place to go all in and just follow, Greg, and look at his plethora of, his exposure was so broad that it got my attention down in Australia. My exposure was so broad, it got his attention on the other side of the world.
Right.
That's the sort of thing. But you don't have to go globally and get people's attention.
No.
You just local, hyper local on your area so that you get more listings, and listings are key. You get all the buyers you want. If you have the disproportionate amount of stock, you get all the buyers. Life's a dream, So
Glenn,
there's the rant.
You are dropping bombs, and this is amazing when it comes down to it, my friend. I mean, really looking at it from every facet, you're constantly learning, constantly growing, and you're picking and choosing very select times. I'm one of the very few people just like you that I've never seen a single minute of Game of Thrones, and I have my best friend Dave. Shout out to Dave if you're watching. He loves Game of Thrones, and he's like, you got to watch it. We got to sit down. And I almost committed to doing it at one point, and I just didn't. I couldn't.
Yeah.
Because taking that so much time, it's finite. So anything that we can do to really improve ourselves and improve our product and our service and our end result, but then also our quality of life with our family and things that really matter. At the end of the day, yes, I have guilty pleasures just like everybody else do. And I'm a movie nut. So if I carve any bit of time, it's nostalgic movies. I do that, but it's the same thing, Glenn. Everything that you were saying speaks to everybody who's watching or listening to this right now. Is pick and choose those topics that you need more guidance in, more thought process. And everybody's different, right? You might be a mindset just nut and know everything there needs to know about that, but maybe you need the tactical side. You need to look at the digital side of the marketing aspect and really brand awareness. No one knows it all, and it's impossible to do so. But really learning from individuals like you, Glenn, is absolutely through the moon and through the roof. You had mentioned, Gary Vee. I would throw Seth Godin in there as well.
Oh, love him. Purple Cow, one of the first books I read. All Marketers Are Liars. Fantastic author. Chuck Seth on your required reading list.
I think so. And again, getting in front of Glenn, please, everybody, I can't implore enough to just look this man, literally just Google Glenn, and he will pop up everywhere. You'll see his amazing stuff and just go through and through. And Glenn, we've just barely scratched the surface of you, but I think that everybody out there who's watching or listening, if this is your first engagement with this man,
if they're still with us now, we're good. We'll be talking again.
This is good, and this is the important thing. But your story is so inspiring and real, true to honest earth. You've just done the work and you put the time in and you focused. It didn't happen overnight, and you really, really made things happen, Glenn. And you're an inspiration. Again, truly honored to have you. I want to finish everything up with a final question. Sure. And this one ends up being the quote or mantra that sums you up as a man, as a professional. What's that look like for Glenn Twiddle?
God. Well, you know what? I mean, the title of my book is called Punching Above Your Weight. Now, I don't know if that phrase translates, but batting above your average kind of thing, whatever it is, meaning here's my natural predisposition. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, because I've had some American friends say, what does that mean? You know, so punching above your weight.
They need to get out more, Glenn.
Yeah, okay. Because my partner, Naomi, you know, if you Google me, you'll always see her. But I mean, she's beautiful, fit, muscular, just stunning. And here I am, me, you know.
Come on,
but I've done things professionally and whatever that you would think are unlikely. So I reckon I'll give you two quotes. They're probably my two favorites. I probably stole them, even though I don't know who to quote. Because when you've got 10,000 plus hours of other people in there, some good stuff gets in. You say something you think is an original thought. It ain't. It's someone else's. It's don't let perfect get in the way of done. Right? So we can't let perfectionism get in the way of having a crack. So that's my first, that's my biggest, I'm always big. I mean, I notice you've got down there, ideas are worthless without execution.
Yeah.
Gary Vee's quote was, ideas are, and I don't know if this is PG rated, but ideas ideas are shit, execution is the game.
Right.
One of my other mentors, it was the power of an idea is in its implementation. All the same message there. Right. So we gotta take action. Without that, all of this is just entertainment, and frankly, Game of Thrones is more entertaining than you and me, right? Happy days. So we've got to take action on what we learned. I hope you took some notes and you do something with this. You subscribe to a Seth Godin podcast, or you go buy Purple Cow, or you start writing the first chapter of your book telling your story. So action, action, action. But the next one is I looked at all my friends. Like I looked at the haters when I first announced that I had Arnold Schwarzenegger. My haters said, here's Glenn. This is a hoax. It's an attention-getting stunt. He has not booked Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is attention-getting. This is that thing he does. They accused me of it being a lie to get attention. I would love to have been a fly on the wall when I was on TV with Arnold. I thought it was great. But I looked at it and I thought, wow, in this entire country of Australia, I've had on my payroll, so to speak, even though you don't treat any of these people like employees. No. But I've had the world's best working for me. And in Australia, there's one person in this country that has had those people on their payroll. Me, right? Wow. And I thought about it. How many people would love to be going to dinner at Arnold Schwarzenegger's house, working out with him at Gold's Gym, drinking bourbon with Sylvester Stallone? You know, the girls love Jason Statham. So when they see the photos of me and Statham, they love it. I think the odds of an idiot from Ipswich doing that are literally, well, there's 22 million people in Australia and I'm the one. You know, so the odds, so I suppose the quote is this, and I'll find a better way to quote this one day, but if the odds of whatever your goals are, if the odds are millions to one, it's kind of like Jim Carrey in that movie Dumb and Dumber where he says, you know, the odds are, he says, so there's a chance, you know. So if the odds of your goals, if the odds of you achieving them are millions to one, well, someone's got to be the one. Right. So give it a crack, be the one. You know, be the one person that's willing to do what it takes to get that. So I suppose if you can help me hone that quote into something quotable, brother, I'm all yours. Yeah, the odds are millions to one.
We'll get together for drinks and we'll do that, Glenn. I know for a fact. This is an honor and a blessing to have you here, Glenn. And again, I think that sums you up beautifully and truly. You live what you speak. And in the I guess the chef world, a chef's got to eat his own cooking. Right? I mean, you practice what you preach. And this is a true testament to what real professionals need to look at these titans And you are an official real estate titan, my friend, through and through. No matter how humble you are, what you say, you are a real estate titan. And, you know, it's a huge example to everybody out there who's really looking for that bar to be set to that next standard. So, Glenn, I can't thank you enough. And seriously, it's been an honor and a pleasure. This has been amazing. This time just goes like a blink of an eye. But I want to thank everybody else as well out there who's tuning in, watching or listening. Thanks as always for your love and support, your time and attention. If you like what we're doing here at Real Estate Titans, don't forget to subscribe, like, and take a look at everything we're doing. Live every Tuesday and Friday afternoon, a different Titan, a different location. We'll catch everybody on the next live episode of Real Estate Titans. Take care. See you, Glenn.
Thanks, guys.